which I must confess I didn't know until we were preparing for this item, because you're very good enough to come on the programme quite often talking about summer savings and tips for people and what have you. So the big picture, there's a little bit of growth, there's falling inflation, there's lower borrowing than feared. The backdrop for Chancellor Jeremy Hunt could be considerably worse than it is.
Yes, which isn't necessarily the best political background that you might want. You either want to really be able to pull all the rabbits from the hat, or you want to, save everybody from some terrible nightmare. And actually, unfortunately, we've been through the terrible nightmare. I mean, what a dreadful last few months, not just the weather, but the cost of living crisis, which has just dragged on and been so painful for everybody. And of course, these energy prices that are still with us. So it's a bit of a strange time to be having this budget. And I think the message is actually going to be steady as she goes, don't frighten the horses.
From the leaked briefings about bridges back into work and what have you, that this may be more of a supply side budget than a demand-side budget. There are very few briefings that he's going to put any money back in our pockets, but simply try and find a way, if we're over a certain age, to get back into work.
Well, I think what we'll see is a lot of very detailed policy prescriptions on specific areas where there is a problem. And we have heard for months and months now about this inactivity in a large part of the labour force. People just, unable or unwilling to go back to work. And what can be done about that? And there's been a lot of work done on the Conservative side about this, from what we can hear. So as you say, there may well be some tweaks or changes made. You talked in your preview earlier on that, we might all be getting an occupational health check. And even small businesses might be incentivised to be able to provide that for people. But it's not just long-term sickness that's the issue. There are other factors that are why people aren't going to work. It could be to do with childcare and how expensive that is. It could be our pension rules. I'd be fascinated by your viewers, because I bet they've got real first-hand experience of that, which make it just pointless, actually, to return to work because of the huge tax rates and the loss of allowances. There's a lot of little detailed stuff going on, and we know from Rishi Sunak, we've seen this with that Brexit deal. He loves that detail. He wants to go in and solve those problems to try and get everything back on track, which means you do slightly miss the big picture message.
Sure. The cost of living crisis is very clearly front and centre, what we normally talk about when you're kind enough to come onto the programme, and what a lot of people come to your website to seek advice and guidance on. But again, call me old-fashioned, but the best way of dealing with a cost of living crisis is to put more money in people's pockets and let them make their own choices about how they spend it.
Well, that's the debate that is racking its way through the Conservative Party, of course. You're kind of alluding there to potential for tax cuts, which have, having been thrust massively in the spotlight in October, September last year, were then pulled and yanked back because of the violent market response to the previous Prime Minister and her plans on that front. And I think that debate's still going to rage, and I think there will certainly be some Conservative MPs and possibly even just people in the country who do think the answer is just, look, put more money into our pockets and we can figure out what to do with it. Sure. But as with all things, how do you pay for all of this? And that is still hanging over this budget because of what happened at the end of last year. They are unable to escape that.